Hello everyone and welcome to my urban segment design project. So before we get into any maps of my area location, I want to go over my project goals and things I want to achieve in fixing the city segment. I want to implement two-way roadways and repave roads with greener solutions. I want to keep forested green areas green and forested, and I want to add a retaining wall between 15th Avenue East and East Boston Terrace. I want to include two small bus stops and include sidewalks everywhere to make the city the most accessible that it can be. I want to include one indoor bus stop with rentable apartments, and I would also like to place trails and forested green areas for community enjoyment. I want to implement a community security gate and surveillance system, and I want bike lanes in the most places possible. I think a community garden could really benefit everyone, and fences on the leftmost side of East Boston Terrace can also protect the community and the walkability of the area. And to also involve walkability in my city, I want to build a one apartment building with shopping on the bottom floor for a more diverse and a more lively city. So here's the first view you guys get of my segment. I chose 15th Avenue East, 14th Avenue East, following with East Boston Street and East Boston Terrace. We also look at East Interlincoln Boulevard. So this area is really interesting as it is a more residential area, which is new and not like a city, so it's going to be hard to involve walkability in this area since it is mostly residential. So here we have the same map in a different view. So in this key you can see the Seattle parks with Seattle-owned land. The blue represents steeper slopes, which are going to be hard to build on. And the yellow haze over the whole image is describing the zoning of the area. Okay, hey guys, I'm Big now. Before we jump into the video, make sure to pause to read any of the quotes if you're interested in them. I will talk through some of them, but I mostly overview them since we're in time crunch. The first topic we're going to be covering is demographics and neighborhood composition. To follow this topic, I'm going to be talking about community gardens, neighborhood security, and mixed use in diverse neighborhoods. So like you can see in this quote that you can read while I'm talking, community gardens are helping everyone by providing more sustainable options for the community to grow food if they don't have area in their own backyard. And they can also benefit lower income and ethnic minority communities, which we're going to be introducing into the city with some of the other developments. These provide healthy food and bonding opportunities for the community to improve the aspect that a lot of families are looking for when moving to Seattle. So the community garden that's going in my segment is going to be right above East Boston Street. This area is perfect as it's right off the main thoroughfare of 15th Avenue East, and this is very accessible to people while also being away from the road for the safety of the community. Like I said earlier, this community garden is going to enhance the community aspect of the area and also provide food for everyone. An issue I'm very interested in solving in my segment is the neighborhood security. I'm going to fix this with a community watch system, gated communities, or the gates around the community, and some extra fences for security. These are going to improve the lives of the people inside the gates and out so that only wanted people are in the areas. The community watch system is also going to help everyone build a community aspect and watch out for each other like friendly neighbors do, classically in movies. The neighborhood watch systems and the security cameras I'm implementing can prevent drug dealers and kidnappers from cities, which I think is very important so that newer families with younger children can feel comfortable in the place that they're living. So like I overviewed on the previous slide, these are the areas that are going to have enhanced security on East Boston Street and East Boston Terrace. The crime watch signs are representations of the crime watch system that the community has, and this will just let people know what's going on. Obviously, the security cameras will be available for everyone to see who is in the community, and people can clearly understand the expectations of the city with these monitoring systems and the gates and fences around the area. Here's a quick overview of the gate location and where it is in real time. When understanding demographics and neighborhood composition, it is very important to understand and include diverse elements in your city for more ethnic minorities and also lower income families. Walkability will give residents the availability to live and work in the same area and also have available school systems to them that are proper. So you can see in this quote that walkable mixed-use neighborhoods are enhancing community values and infrastructure and also creating these jobs in shopping and walkable areas, which will help everyone. So the first element we're going to include is a bodega of sorts with apartments up above and restaurants and dining below. This is going to be a pretty large building located in between 15th Avenue East and 14th Avenue East. This is accessible to all of the homes that you can see on the map. It's going to be walkable in an easy location and also possible for people to easily get to the restaurants off 15th Avenue East, as that is a main road. This can include underground parking for the accessibility and also help everyone if they need to quickly grab something to eat. A concern I thought about when including this aspect is the property value. So property value in homes could possibly go down because of these apartments, but in general, I don't think it would that much because of the benefits this new building brings to the whole community. This next element I'm super excited about. It is a indoor bus stop with rentable apartments. This is a new concept that I researched, which I found very interesting. So my rentable apartments concept is for quick stays. It's not quite a hotel, but this would be monitored by the city. This would benefit homelessness and also help people who need a quick place to stay if they don't have money for a hotel. This bus concept, by storing a bus in a local area, will help the community by understanding the bus systems and also have a sheltered place to get out of the rain and go somewhere in Seattle. Yay, okay, we're on to one of my favorite topics, which is walkability. So we're covering more than the expected topics for walkability. So the first one is putting cars in their place. Number two is the safe walk. Number three is neighborhood structure. And I'm going to talk about public transportation, higher density environments, because this was the topic that I chose. We talked about light rails in my presentation, so we're going to cover that as well. So by putting cars in their place and including the pedestrians and bikers also with the automobile users is important in understanding a proper city composition. So this quote is from Walkable City, I'm pretty sure, and it talks about how cars have been dominating the scene for a while, and it's time for the pedestrians and bikers and everyone else to also be able to share the roads. So a little contradictory to sharing the road, which is building new roads. These roads aren't necessarily going to be new, but they will be repaved. Plastic road is going to be used in these roads, which is a more ethical and sustainable reused purpose for plastic in the environment, and it will also be very interesting to see what happens. This plastic road can also help from freezing, which I know East Boston Terrace struggles with as there are shaded areas and this road can get pretty dangerous in snow. Another benefit repaved roads have on the city is that people will be able to more safely walk in their own areas, like the sidewalks and bike lanes, without feeling the impacts of cars in their space. So we all know the 5 steps of walkability, but the one I wanted to talk about is safety. So a walk must be safe for people to want to use it. The general theory of walkability explains these conditions. So safety in streets means sidewalks and ways for everyone to feel safe and comfortable in their environment. The pedestrian needs to feel comfortable in where they're going, and this will enhance their walkability as more people will want to come to these locations. So looking back at our location, we haven't seen this picture in a bit, but the safe walk is outlined in this Seattle City diagram, explaining feet for cities which roads need. I know residential areas don't exactly have the same requirements, and sorry I'm kind of covering it, but it's interesting to see what the city of Seattle requires. So the big thing you think about when talking about pedestrian safety is sidewalks in their area to safely navigate a city. So in my segment, the current sidewalks are very limited to residential areas in 15th Avenue East and 14th Avenue East. When looking at East Boston Terrace, there are no sidewalks, and this can be very dangerous, especially with the one-way current roadway. So on all the streets that you see, except for the area where the new apartments are going to be, will have new sidewalks for the pedestrians. This will also help people get to things like the community garden or the bus stop. This quote from John Speck outlines how a neighborhood needs to be structured with diversity and walkability in mind. He talks about a city having a center and an edge and building out on each other for those communities that need to be in residential areas or people downtown. Public spaces and residential spaces need to be differentiated from each other, and we're going to include this aspect with ADA compliant crosswalks. So as you can see on the left, there is only one crosswalk that I can find in this area. This is dangerous for the pedestrian and does not help the safety of the people in the area. We're including tons of new crosswalks for everyone to be able to access the city, and this will help with the neighborhood structure, like we saw in the previous quote. Illustrated in the neighborhood structures quote I included was recreation activities that need to be close to where people live. I thought that including recreation trails close to these homes is going to help everyone to have fun and build a community aspect in the city they live in, but also to get some exercise. So the area I chose is Seattle Forest, which should be available to build cities if the community puts effort into building the trails. And this area will connect East Interlaken Boulevard with East Boston Terrace, which is a great area to go hang out in. So obviously it's not accessible for everyone to walk right out of their front door and get downtown, especially from this area in Seattle. So including public transportation and accessible bus stops is a big factor in having walkable cities and more ethical cities that are more environmentally friendly. By upgrading and adding bus stops to the area, more people will use these public transportation systems like the Seattle Sound Transit, and the ridership data will increase. Like you can see from this article, Why Bus Stops Matter, upgrading bus stops is cheap and can help the economy and also help the transit systems which are trying to stay afloat most days. Improving these bus stops and adding more is a balance that needs to be made so that people are able to get to bus stops and able to get to nice ones that they feel comfortable in. So on the left, you can see the current Seattle Sound Transit System map, which has two bus stops which are close together and far apart from the segment I chose. In the segment I chose, we're obviously going to have the one bus stop that I talked about earlier with the apartments, and we're going to have an additional one down between 14th Avenue East and 15th Avenue East, heading down, and I think that's Howe Street or something. But these will help the walkability of the area and enhance the ability people have to get places and walk to their transportation easily. So the topic of walkability and bus stops that we just reviewed weaves in perfectly with transit and transportation. So the things I need to do in my city is redesign bus networks, balance transit covership with ridership, and bring accessible biking in. This is going to be really important to the integrity of the city, as this will really test if the walkability was successful and if the city really needs these implementations, which it's clear that it does. In redesigning busworks, it is important to consider the maps and the accessibility these buses have in relation to the neighborhoods that they are helping. You can also see the proposed land patterns and how they're going to affect the transit system and how the land is used and how the population is going to grow. These quotes are from Walkability City Rules by John Speck. So without the consideration of the expansion of future bus stops, we're going to look at the bus networks involved currently in the area. So the 10th Avenue East and East Newton Street bus stop is only transporting people today on June 2nd to downtown Seattle Broadway. So this means that these people are going to have to take different buses to connect themselves to different locations. This can really impact the way people move around, which is also why the sound transit system light rail is going to help a lot of people when that's finally built and all those connections are finalized. So the other bus stop that needs to be reconfigured as to where they're transporting people to is the 10th Avenue East and East House Street bus stop location. This is only transporting people to the University District, which explains why these bus stops are in different or really close to each other, but go to different locations. Um, this isn't convenient for people who need to go to somewhere other than University District, but it makes sense as it is close to the East Boston Street in the segment I'm designing. So if I were to change this network needs to go to more diverse places, and also more bus stops that are implemented can diversify the places that people are going and transport people to different locations. This whole city, once you include sidewalks, is extremely walkable. The hills aren't that bad. So I think that would really improve the way people get around and transport themselves in Seattle. So I'm going to read this quote in Balancing Transit Coverage with Ridership. A network that only serves people who live and work in densely settled areas will achieve higher ridership, but at the expense of serving those who are more isolated, and vice versa. Before embarking on a network redesign, a transit agency must explicitly decide how much of its resources it wants to dedicate to each goal. So the importance in balancing transit coverage with ridership is understanding what your community wants and needs from transportation and if they even use it at all. So I showed this infographic from Sound Transit in my transportation presentation, and it explains how the Seattle Sound Transit is going to grow over time. So obviously we all know that city population of Seattle grows all the time, and ridership is continuing to grow. So with that, it needs to be understood by the community what is going on, and data needs to be taken from population and who's moving in, who's moving out, what kind of families need these resources. So once that's understood, the Seattle transit system can implement those bus stops, bring in maybe a train stop. So like I said, those bus stops that I've already talked about that would be added to the map are going to help the coverage and the ridership in this area. So the third step in transit in this area is to bring accessible biking into the city. So by promoting bike share as transit and building a coalition of bike share programs, Jeff Speck outlines this in his book, Walkable City Rules. And you can read these if you want and pause them. They're really interesting because they explain how bike share and biking can improve the way people get around the city and make transportation more accessible to people who maybe don't have a car or people who don't want to have a car. So here's just some preliminary current data. You can see the Lime Bike map. I think this was as of the 31st of May. There are some bikes around, but obviously these move every day. And the current biking lanes are outlined as follows. You can bike on any of the streets, so it's just not as safe for the pedestrians and bikers if they don't have somewhere safe to bike. So to redesign this aspect of the city, I'm going to implement biking lanes wherever there is a motor vehicle road. Having pedestrians and bikers and cars sharing these roads and spaces is important for the community to have accessible biking and have safety in where they're going. Hello guys, it is a new day for me, but same day for you. Here is my map you can see on the screen. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I went for a very visual and colorful representation of my segment. You can see the key, it's a little hard to read, but basically I'll explain it. Red is representing the community garden. The pink stuff is representing the neighborhood security, and then the yellow is the mixed use and diverse neighborhoods aspect that I added. White roads are repaved roads, and then the light blue around the whole road system are the sidewalks, and then the dark blue is the crosswalks. The kind of silver color is the existing roadways, and the X's, which there's a couple of them, you kind of have to find them, are the public transportation bus stops. Next, we have the recreation trails, which are in silver, and they're all over the right side. I don't know if you can see that very well. And then the black outline around the roads are the biking lanes. And then the pink and red situations are all the pre-existing homes. And then there is some blue dots around the area showing how potentially scooters and bikes can be distributed around the city. So when I originally attacked this project, I had some really ambitious goals, and thankfully I was able to complete a lot of them with evidence as to why they were needed in the city. But some of the things like the two-way roads and retaining walls were not needed in the city that I chose to create. Everything else was accomplished with evidence and factors that supported the need for the improvements. Having retaining walls may look good and may improve certain aspects like the safety. I didn't have evidence to back up why they were specifically needed. The two-way roads that I originally thought would be good for the city didn't end up happening because I wanted to include bike lanes and safe sidewalks for everyone. So thank you for getting through this project with me. Here are some of the sources. I did include these sources with in-text citations and some of them linked citations in the presentation. Thank you so much for watching. This was a blast. See you next time. Bye.